Uh, it's beautiful here in Maryland, although still a little warmer than some of us would like, me. I'm Elizabeth Beggins. I'm the Maryland Agriculture Outreach Specialist for the Million Acre Challenge, which is a collaborative project, 6 founding organizational partners. Our goal is 1 million acres of Maryland agricultural land in regenerative practices by 2030. Next slide, please. So right off the bat, we're going to go ahead and get a poll going just because it's fun to sort of see who's joined us today and what hat they're wearing. There are also a bunch of questions that relate to you if you are farming, and particularly if you are farming grain like Brian. So if those things don't resonate for you, that's okay. One thing I'll just mention is if we say other, this particular poll doesn't give us the option of giving you a blank space to fill in. So feel free to put in chat what you weren't able to add into the poll. That's just great. What we're looking for is to find out whether you're a farmer, a farm service provider, an ag retailer, whatever applies, and then kind of get a sense of what soil health practices you're looking to learn more about in the future. It just helps us with our program planning. Also, you can go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat box and ask any questions there, but we also will have the option for live question as we go along and towards the end. So all options are available today. Next slide. Oh, let's see. I don't think I've started our poll. That would help. Oh, I am unable to do this one. That's right.
The poll started, but it says choose 3 on number 2, but it only lets you choose 1.
Oh, well, that's a drag. I might have made a setting mistake there. Don't know exactly what happened there, but feel free to look at those options and put them in chat if that's available to you. My apologies if I made a technical error there.
It also won't let us submit.
That is strange. That sounds like something amiss with the poll itself, but I'm not smart enough to know what that might be. My apologies. You're welcome to just jot your name in chat, why you're here, things that you're interested in learning about that have to do with soil health, and we'll look at that that way. So on this slide, what you're going to see is represented some of the work that the Million Acre Challenge is involved with. I'm just sort of hitting the highlights because we want to get to Brian, but our soil health benchmark study, our networking opportunities, kind of like this one. We also have soil health hubs that meet coming up several times a month by production system, on-farm opportunities. The main thing I want to make sure that folks understand today is that we are a farmer-focused initiative. We really do see farmers as the experts, and we recognize that they're part of the solution. And we really are here to help support them in doing the work that they already are doing well. Next slide. So real quick, a few announcements. I just mentioned our hub meetings. They are in October, launching on the first 3 Thursdays of the month from 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, with grain coming first, followed by specialty crops, which is fruits and vegetables and flowers and other things. And then the 3rd Thursday, we do pastured livestock. So you are welcome to join any or all of those. Our lunch and learns like this are every 2nd Wednesday. We encourage you, in fact, really would love for you to engage with us on social media, any of these platforms that you're already interfacing with, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're trying to sort of build our audience. And I'll take a minute to note here that Brian is on Twitter and has some really great, has kind of a catalog of some of the work that he's been doing there. So you can look him up. Our website is a resource for future events, to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, and other soil health resources that we hope will be of interest to you. Next slide. So we're getting closer to the heart heart of the matter here. I get to have the privilege of introducing Brian Racine, who comes to us today from Rising Sun, Maryland, and Racine Family Farm. He has been working alongside his father for years, but his dad is now 81 and according to Brian, done with farming. So Brian has taken over management of the grain operation. His dad was a former dairy farmer some years back, but in more recent years has been farming conventionally, grain, using, if I get these all right, Brian, chisel plows, disking, cultipacker, basically working the soil. That was the mentality. And Brian is taking the farm in kind of a new direction. I think you'll be interested to hear later how he's teaching himself new techniques. It's important to note that the land that he's working on is really varied, 6 or 7 different types of soil and highly erodible with really high water tables. He's been managing the operation in this fashion for 2 years while he's also parenting 2 little boys who are 1 and 2. He also has a full-time job and a mowing business on the side. So I think Brian is some kind of a superhero, but we're really glad he's taken a few minutes out of his busy schedule to be with us today. Brian, we're going to be looking at a few questions together. Next slide, please, Amanda. And this slide is going to go away, but I'll have it in the background that I can, I can use it to kind of guide us. But really from this point forward, we want the conversation to be pretty informal, pretty engaged with our audience. So we'll pull up pictures as best we can to relate to some of the things that Brian is talking to us about. But this is an engaged opportunity for everyone. So Brian, you're going to get to take the microphone pretty much from here, and I'm just going to help guide our questions. So next slide, please, Amanda. So before we jump right into how you started with covers, Brian, just tell us a little bit more about the farm and kind of, what kind of operation you've taken over. I mentioned some of it.
Yep. So we were a dairy farm many years ago, and then some things happened, so we got out of that business, and now we are mostly grain for sale to the elevators. And then so my dad's, like I said, he's getting a little older and he's a little tired of farming, so he left it to me to take over, kind of right out of the bat. So we went right to no-till and cover crops, and figured this is what we're going to try and see how it works.
Amanda, if you'll click to the next slide, I think it's important to see where Brian started. So, as you said, the philosophy was that working the soil was really the best way to handle management. And tell us a little bit about how you kind of have come to think about soil health for your part of the management of this property, and how you're learning about that in particular.
So as you can see in the picture there, that was the first year no-till corn. And then my dad decided he wanted to go out and do some disking, so he made a pass right through my no-till corn before we planted it. So you can see, difference in the color and the height of the corn and the stand and whatnot. So, I feel like that was pretty early on of indication of what we've been doing might not be the best for the crops.
Mm-hmm. And Brian, how did you sort of come to think you wanted to do things a little differently? And I'm intrigued by what you've told me about how you've been teaching yourself that. So
at my regular job a couple years ago, I was a drafter. So I had a lot of time at a desk, and we had 2 monitors. So one sometimes might have had YouTube, and you might have been learning some things on the side while taking a break from my regular job. So first video, I don't know how it came about it. You get stuck on the side of YouTube where you go for one subject and you end up way out in left field. Well, that's kind of where I ended up, and it was a video from Mr. Groff up in Pennsylvania, and he was talking about how he no-tills and rolls covers down and this and that. Next thing you know, I got a whole playlist of videos and way too far into it. And some people say I read too many books or too many articles, but sometimes you got to learn through the books before you try it in real life. And then Dad said, "Hey, it's your turn," so I figured I'd give it a shot.
So this is a question I didn't really put on our list of things to talk about, but it's interesting that your dad has been amenable to your input and changes. Not everybody's parent is like that.
Well, that's a word you could use. Some things we had a couple arguments, and if we didn't see eye to eye, but he's let me do it, and I think he's starting to see that it's making a difference.
So this is a great photograph. You want to elaborate on what we're seeing here a little bit?
So again, Dad gave me some fields. He had some of his own. So I went no-till and we burned down whatever was there and we planted. So here on the left side, was a little bit more of a worked up piece of ground. Corn's planted the same day. It's in the same field, but you can see clearly one looks a little bit healthier. Stand might not be quite as good, but it's healthier, it's taller. And I think it's definitely going to be better once I learn how to be better at it for the future.
And you've been doing this for how long, Brian? How many?
So I think we started the first field we planted no-till might have been 3 or 4 years ago, but for the last 2, we've been 100% no-till, and like not even a disc has seen the form. So we're 100% no-till.
You just went in. You went all in.
Yep. I figured I was going to send it all the way right at the beginning.
One of the things that Brian said to me when we were chatting before this was he's adopted, I think it's Steve Groff, maybe somebody else, but the mentality that if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough.
Yep. And we definitely had some failures, and some things have gone well, but sometimes you gotta fight through the hard spots to get to the good spots.
So talk to us a little bit about that. What are some of the things that you've tried that didn't go like you had hoped?
Well, in Maryland, they'll let you, last year they let us go after the 1st of May before you spray, and you get a couple extra bucks. So, chasing the cheap dollar, I went for it, and little did I know the rye would be 4 to 5 foot tall before we sprayed it. And then, of course, it lays down every which way but the way you would want it to go. And we had to plant corn into that. And when you look back and you can't even see the row unit, it's a little scary, but we just said we're going to do it, and darn, the corn didn't come up.
Yeah, a leap of faith, right?
Yeah, 100. It was scary, and there's a lot of internal thoughts going on, but sometimes you just gotta put your head down and do it and see how it does.
So let's see. Let's pop on to the next picture here. By the way, these are all photos that Brian took and allowed us to use, and I think they're great at representing what he's been working on. Why don't you elaborate a little bit on this one, Brian?
Okay, so in the field on the left, Dad used the disc and worked it up a little bit, and my field's there to the right, and that was my first summer cover crop that I left. Didn't work it in, just let it sit there, and then planted corn into it. And it's the same corn planted the same day, same corn planter, same everything, but you can see one looks a little better than the other one. So now yield, I didn't get the data on it because we had to use a different guy for the combine, so we didn't get the yield map. But the plant's healthier, so it's I feel like it had to have done better.
Mm-hmm. So right before we started the Lunch and Learn today, Brian was talking a little bit about how much rain they got during Ida. And I think this next slide was not taken from that event, but let's talk about the challenge of your water infiltration issues.
So like I said, we've been, full tillage for decades, and I've spent a lot of my childhood looking at this, wondering how big of a ditch I got to fill in today, and how much of our fertilizer and topsoil is washing down the creek. And, about the time Dad said it's my turn, I was tired of watching it float away. So that's when we started no-tilling and going into heavy cover crops and having something growing all the time. And I feel like we've seen a lot clearer water. running down the ditches, and if nothing else, a lot less ponding. So I feel like it's working.
I think the next slide is also related to this, and I can see some potential change happening there, even though one's not necessarily field based. But
Yeah, so
are
on the
you?
left there was a field up in Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, it's full tillage with a plow, and that was just a little rain event. You can see how much dirt's in the soil. And then on the right, obviously it's not raining the same day, but the water that's there is clear, and it's not hitting dirt. It's hitting some kind of plant material and slowing down, and hopefully infiltrating better.
And we'll keep going with the next slide. And Brian, I'm going to encourage you to tell me the story of the worms.
The worms. So I married a lady that enjoys horses. So we got some horses in the backyard. So I get to feed them every morning and night. And walking out, sometimes in the morning, you'll hear things, especially because it's dark and, so you don't really see them because you shine a light, they all tuck in their hole. But if you shine your light just right, they'll stay out there. And I started noticing all these worms, and where the heck do these guys come from? We're only no-till, first year. They don't just show up. It's not like a plane dropped them off. So the more you look, the more you see, and you can see there's a good bit there, and they've been there the whole time. It's just we've been tearing up their houses. So we decided, that's where the no-till comes to help. Then there on the right, that was actually when I was pulling my soil samples for your guys, for the soil health test. And so that was in a swale where I went frost seeded some red clover into some wheat. And if I can make dirt look like that in a swale, there's no reason I can't make it look like that in a field, after a little bit of trial and error.
Yeah, that's got a lot of good stuff going on there, right?
I'm hoping.
What do you look for when you're looking for improvement in your soil? What are you looking for?
So when I look for stuff, I look for obviously gullies or swales that have come from any rain or during the year, or even snow melt. Do I have anything that I got to worry about planting through, or get stuck in? And we used to have a lot of low laying spots that would hold water. I drive around, I see a bunch of things in other people's fields, but I'm not trying to be prejudiced, but mine, I'm not seeing that as much. So I'm hoping that we're getting a little better with the roots and whatnot. And then I look for, after hot summer week, what's it look like under the cover crop that I mowed down or I have laying down. And most of the time, it's damp. Obviously it's not wet, but it's damp. So I'm holding water and I'm keeping the soil cool. So, hopefully the plant can use it and it enjoys it, and hopefully, grows healthier and better.
And we'll get to that. I think you have a picture of that in a minute, but Brian, you titled this slide, so I'm gonna let you run with that. What you're representing there.
Yeah. So this was we were talking about the rod being a little tall before we sprayed it. So this is the first couple of passes through one of our better fields. So obviously, you want to make sure you do good on those fields. So it's just this picture to show what I'm trying to plant through with 50-year-old technology. Nothing fancy, but so it had a sprayer pass, this fertilizer guy. I spread chicken manure on top of that, and then I tried to plant. So just finding where I'm supposed to be is hard enough, let alone hoping the corn is finding where it needs to be. But you don't know until you try, and figured worst case, I just got to buy some more corn, and sales guy will be a little happier. So we went for it.
And the next slide, I love the contrast here.
Yeah, so that was what the rye would have been, if we hadn't sprayed it in the same field. 4 to 5 foot tall. I'd rather plant beans in something like that than corn, but we were chasing a couple bucks, so we sprayed it out, and that's what didn't get sprayed because it was in a swale. So it'll go real tall, and just to seeing, and it was good to see because now I know what it can look like if I let it go, and am I ready to do that? Am I not ready to do that? So
how are you feeling about that question? Are you ready to do that?
Oh, I'm always ready to try it. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of land, so it's not the end of the world. I'm not renting somebody's field to try it. This is our field, and I can see it. And if it doesn't work well, I just plant more beans, or, try something else. But yeah, I mean, you don't know until you try it, and if it doesn't go well, then you learn for next time. But if you don't try it, you'll never know how it would have went.
So we'll just springboard off of that a little bit, because you were careful to explain to me that you do have a little bit of a safety net, because you do have a full-time
Yep.
other way of making your income, and that's not nothing. So if you want to elaborate on that a little bit, that would be good.
Yep. So the farm has been pretty much self-sufficient after all these years of dad farming and me farming. So we don't need it to pay our mortgage or to pay off anything. We don't really buy a whole lot of equipment. We don't need the newest, shiniest stuff. I mean, both my trucks are 18 years old. So, there's nothing we need to have. And so we can, well, at least I feel like I can try a little bit of stuff and see what happens and not have to worry about, in February or March if I could fill my propane tank up, stuff like that. So I feel like I'm a little bit easier to jump on something and to try it and to see how it goes.
What are you thinking are your ongoing? I don't want to bring up challenges all the time, but you're 2 years in. What do you think you have the most opportunity available to you still to sort of for learning, and which things are you starting to feel like that feels a little less scary to me now?
Well, after planting corn into the 4 or 5 foot tall rye that blew over every which way, I'm a little bit more confident in my corn planter, my planting. Now I did rebuild it. Now everything from the bar back is almost brand new, so it's nice and tight and in better shape than what it used to be, where if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. But so I'm able to do more and try more because I'm confident in my equipment. I'm planted. The no-till drill is obviously meant for no-till, and I'd like to try it out and make sure it is. And so far it has been. So, yep.
And I remember you discussing with me just kind of you're at the mercy of you don't have a combine, you don't. So maybe folks would like to hear more about how you're managing that.
Yep. So we contract out the combining and the spraying. So sometimes, well, most of the time you're at their hands and their schedule, and you have to wait for them. So whenever it's our turn to finally go, you have to be ready. That's why we try to do a little bit of maintenance while we can over the winter. And now that we have a little bit more confidence, I can let some things go a little year, or maybe I need to change out opener blades a little bit sooner, and try that. But I mean, sometimes it's good to have those things like a sprayer and combine, but for me, being a small farm, I'd rather just focus on the planting and put the seed in the ground and the crazy cover crops and all the other fun things and the people talking in the coffee shops than what I need to have equipment wise.
So I'd love your insight on this slide.
Yep. So this was first year corn, first year no-till corn. So some of it was leftover residue, which you can see there, and some of it, the cover crop, for whatever reason, just didn't grow well. So I think the corn was maybe knee high or so. I think it was a hot July day, and you can just see, there's even in the shade where there's nothing, you're looking at 100 degrees soil temp at 2 inches. And when you look over where the cover crop is, I think it was like 85 or 90 or something. But 10 degrees to me is a lot cooler. So I could imagine being a plant out there trying to grow with limited moisture and whatnot, and sun beating down on you. I think 10 degrees would help out a lot.
And I want folks to hear about your seed mixes and what the evolution of that is.
So again, YouTube, get a little crazy. You watch a little bit of things and you start to think you can do stuff too. And, well, if I'm going to do something after wheat, I might as well try it all. So I think the first year I bought a mix from local seed. It was a sun hemp, sorghum, and some radish, and that was in the picture with the two different height corn. The one on the right, that was the with the sun hemp and sorghum in it. And then the Racine summer cover mix there is my last concoction, if you want to call it that. I tried to get a plant from each group. So like a warm season broadleaf, a cool season grass, legumes, brassicas that that had available to see what happens when I plant it. What's it look like? How's it grow? What's it going to do for me? Is it too much of this? Is it too much of that? And last year we had some sorghum in the mix, and it was taller than my tractor. I couldn't even see in front of the tractor where I was going. It was kind of scary, but like I said, if you don't try it, you never know. So we learned some things that year, and maybe not so much sorghum, and maybe we mow it a little earlier. So this year we mowed half of it to see what's that do for me. And we've been a little dry, so it's not quite 12 feet tall. So hopefully I don't have to plant through too much stuff next year.
And I think, Brian, this is the last of your slides, and we can also entertain questions as they've come to folks. But what's happening here?
So there on the left with my wife and the UTV, that's where we had to ride just every which way, and I couldn't see the row unit, and I didn't even know if the corn was going in the ground, but we just sent it, and I put it down, I think 2 3/4, 3 inches or something, just hoping I was cutting through residue. And we went out, I think 2 weeks later, and my heart finally started breathing a little better, and you see little green specks popping up, and I knew I didn't have to replant the whole field. So I was relieved there, and you could just see the cover in the field, how thick it is, and the mat that it planted, just a regular old 7,000 corn planter, nothing, no room cleaners or nothing, did his job. And then there on the right is a rye, winter cereal rye. And I think I tried to pull it out to see if I can get how much of the root I can get. And you can see where I broke the grass off the first time. And then it finally came out, and that's just what came out of it. So I would love to see how much more root was there, but that was only a 3-inch tall piece of cereal rye. So I'm sure there was a heck of a root mass down there helping me get water in there and everything else.
Yeah, that's impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
One little plant. Imagine all the thousands.
Yep.
So we are, believe it or not, already at the end of our session, but we do have time for a few questions if folks have them, either live or in chat. I don't think I've seen anything in chat, but I don't monitor it as well when we're going along here. Any questions?
Elizabeth, Steve Dorsey here.
Hi, Steve.
How's everyone?
Good.
Good. Hey, Brian, I love your story. I am also a farmer. I'm the director of the local soil conservation office in Prince George's. So my story is kind of similar to yours. The things that I see now on the farm, from growing up as a kid and a young man, everything was clean tilled to now everything is no till. And one of the two of the things I wanted to mention that you showed in your slides, I have clean water running off of my crop fields now into the grass waterways and the buffers. I mean, it's so clean that you're tempted to put a cup down there and drink it. I grew up just like you, fixing gullies, cutting branches and pine trees, and grandpa said, okay, well, today we're going to fix the gully in the backfield. And it's just so much more enjoyable now to see the water going in the ground and not running all the soil off the ground. The other comment I wanted to make is about the worms. So as a boy, I just have to attribute this to 30 years of no-till. I don't know what else to attribute this to. And I even have pictures. I walk the dog every morning, every evening. The worms are like 18 inches long and they're big as a 2-inch pencil or bigger than that in diameter. I, in my whole life, have never seen worms that gigantic. As a kid, you're looking under bricks and rocks and logs to get worms to go fishing in the pond. A big worm might have been 4 inches long, right? I mean, these things are enormous. It's Even my dog stops and looks at them to see what the heck what it is. Anyhow, I loved your presentation. Keep moving forward, man. If you're not failing, you're not trying. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. I'm fortunate enough to have other income, so I have been able to try some things, but it's fun. It's exciting. This year, I will make one more comment. I tried Ray's Crazy Mix, for those of you that know what that is. Man, oh man, that is so exciting because I didn't realize it had turnips in it. I mean, real turnips. That I was eating turnips. I was eating daikon radishes. I burned it all off and sowed no-tilled my sunflowers in for dove hunting. And I did it in strips, and those areas that I left fallow, I just let it turn all brown. And then I mowed it, and it's coming back up with vetch and chickpea and turnips. And it's like the cover crop that won't end. And it's just, it's just beautiful. So thanks for your presentation. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It's good to see everybody.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I had some of those turnips. Any other questions? I know we're coming up on time, but we don't mind squeaking a little over for anybody that can stay longer.
I'll just say thanks for putting this together. This is good. And go ahead, Brian, that it's working out for you. We love to hear about this right here in Cecil. So keep up the good work. And if there's anything we can do to assist you, let us know.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Brian, I want to know, what are you going to try next? What's next on your list?
Well, I wanted to do it this year, but I didn't get around to it, but I planted the cover crop. So I want to do 60-inch Indian corn and popcorn, and then have chicken tractors in the middle growing on a custom mix. I got the mix in and I got the corn in, but I didn't get to the chicken tractor. So it's a little bit of weeds right now, and it's a little overgrown, but I think next year if I can, I'd like to get more animals involved in the farm, and I feel like that's the cheapest, easiest way to get in and see what that brings to the soil health.
That's pretty cool. Would you do laying chickens or meat chickens or?
Either or right now. It's we're thinking meat just so we could maybe sell it, but I think it's more of just to try it, see how it goes, and then worry about the end product of the chicken, maybe next year or whatnot. But I'd like to have at least a year of it working and me know what I'm doing before I get too far into trying to process them and everything.
I'll mention quickly before I go to the question that's come into chat that Racine Farm is part of the benchmark study, which Lisa Garfield, who's been on the call with us today, heads up for the Million Acre Challenge, working under Future Harvest. And so it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens there over that long-term study. Helen Raleigh from Story Hill Farm has a little bit of her story here, but she's asking, have you noticed any increases in bees or butterflies with the changes that you've made?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you could just look out, right in the middle of the crop now and just see, there's bugs everywhere and bees everywhere. It's just, they're a little hard to show in a phone, but yeah, definitely increase in bug activity, above ground, on top of the ground, flying around. I'm not even sure what all of them are, but I'm sure some are good and some are bad, but hopefully the good outweigh the bad.
Other questions? This is all great. And like I said, I feel like your enthusiasm is contagious, but that's a tricky word to use nowadays, but it's like the right kind of contagious.
Yeah.
Just a comment on the bug situation. I think that's really great. And I wish everybody could hear that when you garden or farm a different way, and the increase in the number of not only bugs on top of the soil, but under the soil. I think a lot of people don't realize that when you change your farming techniques, you change everything. You'll change the fungus in the soil, the insects in the soil, and then the insects above the soil also change. When you'll get, like you said, some might be bad, but when you're farming a better way, the good and the bad kind of balance out. They take care of each other. you won't have, your crops mowed down by bad bugs because you'll have enough good ones to take care of the bad ones if you're farming, using better practices. So it's really a good story for what you're doing, and I'm glad you're doing all of that stuff. I work for the Cooperative Extension in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're through the U of A. And the U of A is, the Ag University. And so I do a lot of stuff with ag. I'm a water researcher as well. And I'm a plant biologist, and I've been doing environmental science for a really long time. So it's really neat to see that there's changes out there. And I'm so glad you noticed the bugs, because so many people, I work with people with the community, trying to inform them and educate them that when you see an insect, you don't have to grab things and start trying to kill it, and so I'm glad that you see that. That's really good. I wish everybody could.
Thank you so much, Amber. That's a great input. And I remember when I was a market farmer, my initial philosophy didn't understand how much of what we do is soil based and sort of ground up instead of top down. You look
Very
at
much.
and think, what do I need to do to fix that? And you don't automatically necessarily think about what do I need to do to improve the soil that it's growing in. But it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. I spend a lot of time trying to educate people. I work with the Master Gardener program, and I'm also work with a gardening center, and I do gardening consultations for people, and not with farming, but with small scale farms and stuff, and gardening, and people that sell at whatever places they sell at, little stores and shops and farmers markets. And some people just don't understand the soil. It's like you said. So I took this to kind of see what you guys had to say, what's going on across the country and what are other people doing, So.
Kimmy, that's so funny. I was just getting ready to comment on your being part of this, because I know that you are a big part of what's happening on this farm. Kimmy says, as the wife, I will say the kids and I enjoy having more time with him in the spring, since he isn't putting so many hours into plowing and disking the ground. There's a side benefit that we love to know about too. All right, we should probably wrap up unless there's burning questions that have been left unsaid up to now.
Let Brian get back to work.
That's right. Which work, right? So much of it.
Right. All his
We
work.
are available. Amanda and Lisa and I are available through the website. Don't hesitate to reach out to us for ideas, resources, things that you're struggling with. We really hope you'll continue to be engaged with this project. Brian, you did a great job, and you're doing a great job, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Brian, thank you. We're very grateful to you for joining us, and for all your experimenting and curiosity, and for being willing to share it.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.
Kimmy, thank you too. I know you're trying to feed kids lunch, but we're glad you were here.